Last week, Donald Trump won the US election, meaning that he secured his spot as the next president of the United States. And with his return, he brings a big, bold plan for Bitcoin that could change everything. The United States is already one of the biggest holders of Bitcoin. But Donald Trump hinted a few months ago that it might soon go on a shopping spree to acquire even more. And it wouldn't be the only country that's bullish on Bitcoin and that's stacking more Bitcoin. We already know the cases of El Salvador, which is buying Bitcoin and mining Bitcoin every single day, and also Bhutan, which is heavily mining Bitcoin right now. So in this video, I'm going to break down Trump's big, bold strategy for Bitcoin. I'm going to share why the US is currently one of the biggest holders of Bitcoin and why what is about to happen could completely change the crypto landscape forever. So if you want to stay updated on major developments in the market, then just do me a favor, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel, because I'm going to be posting regular videos throughout this crypto market cycle to help you to maximize your profits as a crypto investor. And just a quick disclaimer over here, nothing in this video is financial advice. Everything is just for educational purposes only. You should always do your own research before making any investment decision. Now, let's dive in. The USA is about to buy massive amounts of Bitcoin. Yes, last week, major day in the US. Everyone got to the voting ballots, and they casted their vote for who was going to be the next president of the United States. They, of course, had a choice between Kamala Harris, Donald Trump, and a few others. And Donald Trump won with a landslide victory, meaning that he will be the next president of the United States. And if you would believe the crypto community, and when I'm talking about the crypto community, I'm mainly talking about the people on X. There's a very lively crypto community over there. And the narrative that is circulating over there on X is that when Donald Trump gets elected as the next US president, we are going to see a super cycle for Bitcoin, because Donald Trump is seen as a very pro-crypto, pro-Bitcoin president. And in this video, we are going to dive into and dissect some of his statements and speeches earlier in the past few weeks and months that are hinting at what might come in the next near future. So if we look at the countries and governments that are currently owning Bitcoin, this is a list, you can simply find it on Google, and you'll see that there are quite some countries that are holding Bitcoin. The US, China, UK, Ukraine, Bhutan, which I mentioned in the introduction, El Salvador, Finland, Georgia, Germany. So these countries acquired their Bitcoin in completely different ways. For example, El Salvador is buying 1 Bitcoin every single day, but they're also harvesting thermal energy from a volcano to mine Bitcoin. Then we have Bhutan, which is a very mountainous country, and they're using their sovereign wealth fund to invest in Bitcoin mining to harvest a lot of their hydro energy to mine Bitcoin. So they have already mined 13,000 Bitcoin in just a very short period of time. And then we have the US, China, and UK, which acquired most of their Bitcoin by seizing them through lawsuits, for example. Now, the US holds around 207,000 Bitcoin, and China holds around 194 Bitcoin. So both of them are quite large Bitcoin holders. The third is UK, and then the list goes on. So I just wanted to show that right now, countries and governments hold around 529,000 Bitcoin. That's quite a significant number, especially when you take into account that Bitcoin will only ever have a maximum supply of 21 million Bitcoin. So that means that countries and governments hold around 2.5% of the total supply. Now, a few weeks ago, we saw a massive blunder, a massive fail of the German government. Germany sold off its Bitcoin reserves, which they were holding around $3 billion worth of Bitcoin, which they seized in a lawsuit, in a criminal lawsuit, and they sold it onto the market, and they acquired around $3 billion worth of Bitcoin. They did that at a price of around $62,000 per Bitcoin. Well, if you have been active in the Bitcoin space for a while, you know that Bitcoin has been hovering sideways around 60,000, 70,000 for quite a while in the past few weeks and months. But if you understand the fundamentals and you understand what is going on in the market, then you know that they sold way too early. And in fact, they're doing the exact opposite of what other countries like El Salvador, which is buying 1 Bitcoin every single day, and Bhutan, which is aggressively buying Bitcoin. And they understand that the future is to hold assets in your treasury that can actually appreciate in value. What did Germany do? They thought, no, we're going to sell this digital fake internet money and we're going to set it off. And they raised around $3 billion. So I personally believe that this will go into the history books as Germany's worst financial decision. Let's see, what do you think? Let me know in the comments if you also believe that this is Germany's worst financial decision. They practically paid nothing for these Bitcoins. They sold it off. But if they would have just held on to that Bitcoin, maybe in the future, for example, if you believe that Michael Saylor's predictions are going to hold true, that 1 Bitcoin might become worth $13 million per Bitcoin by 2045, then they would be absolutely stupid to sell it at a price of $62,000 per Bitcoin. So let's talk about the US, because this video is about the US. US has a new president, and this new president, Donald Trump, has been quite vocal about his perspective on Bitcoin and crypto. Trump vows to keep 100% of the Bitcoin the US government holds, saying it will serve as the core of the strategic national stockpile. So Trump, one of the allures of Trump is that he is a businessman. He understands balance sheets, cash flow statements, and he understands that one of the biggest problems the US currently has is, number one, it's inflation. So its currency is rapidly decreasing in value due to money printing. And the second thing is it's rapidly increasing national debt. And with that increasing national debt, it also needs to service interest payments. And that will be a very big cost for the US as an economy. So rather than holding paper money on its balance sheet or in its reserves, he understands the potential of investing in assets that appreciate in value. So that's why Donald Trump is considering not selling any of his 207,000 Bitcoin. So this is quite a significant amount of supply. So if you assume that this is not going to be sold like Germany, then that's a big chunk of the supply that's taken out of circulation, and the available supply on the market is already very scarce. Senator Cynthia Lummis says that creating a strategic Bitcoin reserve will cut the US national debt in half. So this comes down to the fact which I just told you, like by investing in assets that appreciate in value over time. So Bitcoin has been the best performing asset class of the past decade, generating around 230% per year between 2011 and 2021. By holding something like that over time, you actually generate something of real value, which you can then use in the future to sell off and pay off the massive outstanding debt. And that could be one of the strategies for the United States to pay off its debt. Because right now there's around 35 trillion, 36 trillion, I don't know. I took this screenshot a while ago, but every single time you blink with your eyes, you see another few million that is being added to the national debt, and it's really getting out of hand. I honestly don't believe this can be a very healthy system. And in order to sustain such a system, we need to print, or the US government, the Fed, needs to print massive amounts of money in order to keep the economy afloat, in order to pay off the debts, in order to stimulate the economy to keep growing. And when you have a lot of money printing, then you will see that the currency will start to devalue. So if you look at $1 today, or in 2020, that would actually be equivalent to $26 of spending power almost 100 years ago. So within 100 years, the dollar has lost so much of his purchasing power. And that's due to money printing. And with this massive amount of money printing that's currently happening, this inflation is only expecting to get worse. So when you see and hear stories on the news and in the newspapers about people not being able to pay for their grocery stores, their groceries, their milk, their eggs, their petrol, then it is because their currency is just becoming worthless over time. It's not that eggs are becoming more expensive. No, the currency that they're using to pay for those eggs is becoming less valuable. That's the whole problem with inflation. Now, let's briefly examine this whole concept of a Bitcoin strategic reserve. So governments around the world, not only the US, but most likely, I don't know, wherever you are, your country, your government also has strategic reserve assets. So there's a few different assets that a government can hold in their treasury. For example, foreign currency reserves. So a very common foreign currency for many governments who hold on their balance sheet is the dollar. Why? Because a lot of the international trade is settled in dollars. Oil has been traded for many decades in dollars, so that's why it's useful for some governments to hold excess dollars in their treasury in case they might use it, or in case the currency conversion rate is really bad, they could use some of the dollars in their reserves. But of course, the euro is also a very commonly used currency, the pound, the yen. So those major currencies are often held in treasuries. Gold is very common. A lot of governments around the world are holding gold in their reserves. Special drawing rights, then government securities, for example, treasury bills from the United States, bonds, foreign exchange reserves in emerging markets. So those, you have, of course, different tiers of assets. Some are very low risk assets, some are a little bit higher risk assets. So here specifically, this segment is about emerging markets. So emerging markets are upcoming countries, and it might be very interesting to hold some of their currencies, financial instruments, you name it. And another category of reserve assets is crypto and digital assets. Now, let's briefly talk about gold, because gold, when we're talking about strategic reserve assets, then gold is often brought up. So when we look at the current gold reserves around the world, you can see that the United States is the largest holder of gold. Then Germany, Italy, France, Russia, China. So Russia and China are rapidly buying more gold. Japan, India, the Netherlands, Turkey. So these governments are holding quite a lot of gold. So here you can see the United States is holding 8,133 tons of gold. Germany is holding 3,351 tons of gold. And that's quite significant. I want to show you this. So maybe you've ever heard of Fort Knox. Fort Knox is where the US government holds its gold reserves. And supposedly it's one of the safest places on the planet. So here on the left, you see Fort Knox. So it seems like a very quiet fort in the middle of nowhere, but very nearby, I believe here in the background, there is an army base. There are many layers of concrete, enforced concrete, and actually the gold is not stored in this house that you see above the ground. That's actually just the entrance. The gold is stored very deep below the surface in very heavily secured vaults with many different layers of security and protection. So within Fort Knox, all of this gold of the United States is secured. And as you can imagine, it costs quite a lot of money to build something like the Fort Knox, to secure it, to put people around its perimeter, to maintain an enemy base, to constantly secure and monitor the entire environment. So it's quite expensive to hold such large gold reserves, and quite impractical. So let's go back to this idea of Trump playing with the idea of paying off the $35 trillion national debt with Bitcoin. So it's already holding around 200,000 Bitcoin. Compared to gold, Bitcoin has been performing really well over the past 10 years, 15 years. Michael Saylor predicts that one Bitcoin could go to $13 million per Bitcoin by 2045. That could be a very interesting price target to play with. Imagine if the US would hold onto its Bitcoin for the next 21 years and it would indeed go to $13 million per Bitcoin, then you can just calculate how much that would generate for the US. So 200,000 Bitcoin multiplied with $13 million per Bitcoin. That gives you quite a significant amount of money that you can use to pay down the national debt. And when the national debt gets paid off, then there's less interest that needs to be paid. There's less pressure. Citizens have to pay less taxes to keep up with all of the debt. And that would put the US in a very great position. So here, Lark Davis is discussing the case of El Salvador. So El Salvador has actually been stacking 1 Bitcoin per day since November 18, 2022. So El Salvador is just a very tiny country, and they're buying 1 Bitcoin every single day. Right now, they've accumulated 5,912 Bitcoin, which is worth 395 million. And this is what they've generated in the past 2 years. I believe right now it's already worth a lot more because this tweet is from a while ago. And similarly, the US is already holding quite a lot of Bitcoin, but if they could actually buy more Bitcoin with their excess cash reserves, or maybe they could convert some of their gold into Bitcoin to also buy 1 or multiple Bitcoin or 100 Bitcoin per day, something like that. We're seeing actually large institutions like BlackRock scooping up hundreds and thousands of Bitcoin per day. The United States has access to a money printer, which basically prints infinite amounts of money. So I could understand that they would use some of that printed fiat money in order to acquire some Bitcoin to go on a shopping spree. And when that happens, it could mean that, again, hundreds and thousands of Bitcoin will be taken off the market to be stored in the US Treasury, to become a US strategic reserve asset, which could in the future be used to pay down the national debt of the United States. So that could be a very interesting play, which some are expecting that Donald Trump might initiate. Here, President Bukele just announced that El Salvador will no longer rely on external debt to finance its budget. This is a major move for Bitcoin, showing the world how financial independence is done. El Salvador is setting a new standard. Could this be the blueprint for other nations seeking financial independence? So why did I put this into this video? Well, there's a lot of countries around the world which are struggling financially. And when they're struggling financially, they need to borrow money from the IMF. And they need to submit to very strict repayment terms and conditions, which oftentimes make them even more impoverished. The United States is in a position where a lot of the world trade is being done with dollars, so it can afford to print more money, but it's not healthy to keep on printing more money over time. So here you see how clever this strategy of President Bukele of El Salvador is to buy Bitcoin, and now they don't need to have any more external financing because they made a few smart financial decisions. And I hope that President Trump is going to sit down with President Bukele and talk about this Bitcoin strategy, because I do believe it could be very beneficial for Bitcoin, and I do believe that Donald Trump is already playing with this idea. So this could be very interesting, and this, if it will play out, could mean that the US is going to buy up more Bitcoin, and there's going to be even more buying pressure out there. So I'm really curious to hear your thoughts about all of this. Let me know in the comments. Is it likely that the US is going to buy more Bitcoin, or do you think they're going to just hold on to their Bitcoin, or do you think they're going to sell it off just like Germany? All right, I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, make sure to hit that like button so I know you got good value out of it. And if you haven't done so yet, also make sure to subscribe to my channel so that you stay up to date about everything that's currently going on in this complex and ever-evolving market. That being said, peace out. I'll see you in the next video.